So Kash Patel has been picked by Donald Trump to be his new FBI director, and I, of course, have some concerns, and I'd like to talk about them. So first, I'd like to talk about who Kash Patel is and what he's done. So Kash Patel is an American lawyer, and he used to be a former federal prosecutor at the Department of Justice. He was previously the chief of staff to the U.S. Secretary of Defense, and he served as the National Security Council advisor. And he basically did a lot of important stuff in the White House. So I got to say that in terms of his resume, he does have a couple of things on his resume that does make him seem a bit qualified. I've watched a lot of the news who felt like he was severely unqualified. To be honest, I'm being neutral here. He had some interesting things like being a lawyer or public defender. That does seem to give him a couple of qualifications to have this job, right? I also wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that he's going to be replacing Christopher Wray, which is a bit fascinating because Christopher Wray is Donald Trump's previous pick. The issue that Donald Trump had with Christopher Wray is Christopher Wray was a bit independent, right? He didn't do everything that Trump asked him. He told him, Christopher Wray was the kind of guy to tell Trump no on quite a lot of things. And in fact, Christopher Wray did investigate Trump, which I'm pretty sure Trump has been highly offended about. And Trump is very big on people being loyal to him. So if you're going to investigate him, he's definitely not going to be happy with you. So, like I said, I do have to let you know that I do see a couple of problems with Kash being nominated as the FBI director. And the funny thing is, it isn't the typical problems that a lot of Trump's nominations have, which is usually some type of allegation against women. Kash doesn't have any of that. Which it's gonna sound so crazy for me to say this. I'm actually commending the fact that we have somebody who doesn't have any allegations against women for the first time, because we've seen the other picks that Trump has. But there's still a problem with having Kash be the FBI director. I'm gonna get into that so I can give you the information you need to make up your mind about whether he is a good pick. So I want to show you a video first before I go on, which will probably help you understand what my concerns are. So watch this with me.
We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. Yes, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you. Whether it's criminally or civilly, we'll figure that out. But yeah, we're putting you all on notice.
So right there, just watching that video, he's already said quite a few fascinating things. He said he wants to, and this is him speaking on a interview with, I think, Steve Bannon. He's saying that he plans to go after the media. He plans to go after the people who, and people still think that the election was overturned or stolen by Joe Biden. So he's going to investigate whoever he thinks facilitated that kind of theft. Right. It's going to be a lot. He has the desire to follow Trump's retribution campaign. I don't know if you guys have heard about the fact that Trump is running a campaign of retribution. Whoever made Trump mad is going to feel it. And so so now I think this interview, by the way, was before he was picked to be the FBI director. So I just want to keep that in context. He didn't say that particularly after he was chosen to be director. He said that before. And think about that energy going into this position as the FBI director, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, where you investigate people. So as you can see, Patel is a diehard loyalist of Trump, okay? He's a loyalist. Trump has been on this new campaign of loyalism, which is simply that he only wants people who is loyal to him, okay? And that's it. He almost doesn't care about your qualifications. He doesn't care if you're the best for the job. Trump's new agenda is, if I tell you to do something, no matter how crazy it might be, will you do it? And the reality is Patel is coming off as a guy, if Trump asks him to do something, even if he shouldn't do it by, law, or if it's just something that, FBI director shouldn't do, it's more likely than not that Patel, Mr. Kash Patel, is going to do it. if Trump asks him for that. So if Trump tells Patel to jump, Patel is gonna ask him how high. So I'm gonna move away from Patel, and I actually want to talk about Trump's obsession with loyalists. In order to do this, I'm actually gonna talk about something else. I actually want to give a quick history lesson. I want to do a little bit of social studies real quick. So, if you guys know, I'm pretty sure you guys remember our founding fathers like George Washington, Ben Franklin, right? They wanted to. I'm sorry, I need to go back a little bit. So, long time ago, we actually used to have a king. So there was a king who actually ruled. Well, he ruled over Britain, and he also ruled over America because America was just a colony. You guys remember that the colonists got fed up with that. They did the revolution. They overthrew Britain's rule. Of course, I'm just fast forwarding you. We don't have to get into all of the details. And essentially, we became a democracy. And so, our best people, our founding fathers like George Washington and Ben Franklin, create made sure to build a government. They made sure to build a government that absolutely could never be ruled over by a king. They did everything to make sure that no one man could consolidate power within our government and rule over everybody and have to listen to just this one man, right? So our democracy from the ground up is allergic to the idea of having a king. From the ground up, the fathers had an OCD like mentality about avoiding having one man make all the decisions for the rest of us. They wanted it to be a unanimous decision. Um, I'm sorry, a decision built upon the consensus of a large group of people with differing opinions, right? Really important. Sometimes we forget, like, that we're supposed to be having these disagreements with all these people because we're supposed to eventually come to a conclusion or a compromise based on all of our differing opinions. So it's really odd to see people starting to gravitate towards having one man, Donald Trump, tell you what should and shouldn't be doing. Like it's a bit odd. It's out of our nature as Americans in order to it's out of our nature as Americans to want to have a king. I almost thought to myself, I had the thought to myself, which was like, hey, I think the Republicans yearn for a king once again, despite the fact that we've gotten far away from that. So let's continue with our history lesson. In order to prevent a president from ever becoming a king, they created the three branches of government. Yes, we're back in social studies. Let's go over them. So, we have the legislative branch. Okay. Who's that? That's Congress. We know Congress. Congress is that place that those January 6th insurrectionists went to attempt to overturn democracy, and also they attempted to get rid of our vice president, Mike Pence. You remember him? Right. So Congress has the Senate and the House. So we all do know that, Trump has actually won both the majority in the Senate and the House of Representatives. Good for him. We'll see how that works out. So they also have the role of advise, and consent, which means that whichever people that the president would like to put into power, into their positions, the Senate, Congress has the right to basically say yes or no. Right. I'm going to skip the executive for a second. Actually, no, I'm not. The executive is where our president is, of course. The president, our vice president. And the most important thing that we are trying to discuss right now is his cabinet. Right, the president gets to choose his people, but he gets to choose the people in his cabinet, but they still do have to be approved by Congress, generally speaking. So, and then we also have the last one, which is the Supreme Court. That's where our favorite man, the person I think is one of the worst people, Clarence Thomas. He lives over there, and generally speaking, throughout history, what the judicial branch does is they wait for a case to come to them based off the laws that were made in the legislative and the executive branch to come to them so that they can interpret it and decide if that law was just or not. Now, usually throughout history, they've come to a conclusion that changed the law and sometimes granted more rights to people. But ever since King Clarence, I can't even call him a king, but ever since Clarence has come in, we've noticed that we've been losing rights instead of gaining rights. It's very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. So I want to come back to the executive. So you want to talk about the president. The president is not a king. He has these other branches to be a check on his power. They separated his power as much as they possibly could, right? The president is never a king. So I want to now the executive branch does have this power, though. The president does have this ability to make something law for a period of 3 months, right? He can make anything law for 3 months, and then after that 3 months, the legislative branch can decide whether to terminate that law or if they should make that law permanent, right? Really important to understand that because we all know that Donald Trump is going to write so many executive laws. He's going to make laws that we will have to follow for a period of 3 months. And that law is the law. You have to follow it. You have to follow it. So I want to ask you guys a question. Is there a way to convert a democracy which has a president to a democracy that has a king? That's a really weird question for you to ask, but I do think there is a way to do this. So, in order to do this, you're going to have to install people in every part of the government that will listen to you and follow everything that you tell them to do, right? Which is basically the playbook, unfortunately, that Donald Trump is doing right now. He's making sure that he installs people, first starting with his cabinet, of course. Actually, that's all he can do. Every person in his cabinet is going to be a person who will do anything that he asks them to do, even if it isn't right, even if it's illegal, right? And in terms of Congress, he's sort of done this by putting a lot of pressure on Republicans to either to go along with him, or you will essentially be ousted from the Republican Party. So we have a person like Liz Cheney, who is like ousted from the Republican Party. She still considers herself a Republican, or she was a Republican, but she basically got kicked out of the Republican Party, right? And that's what he's done. So really important is that Trump is going to install people who will listen to everything he says in each part of the government. So if you manage to do this, you're going to end up in this really, really odd situation where you're actually in a democracy. Well, it appears like you're in a democracy, but every person who is at the lever of power are not following democracy, right? They're loyalists. They're going to do whatever Trump asks them, but they look like they're a part of the democracy because they're in these jobs that used to be held by people who follow the democracy, right? So that's going to be a very unfortunate situation because Trump is going to be able to do things that are wrong. And then he's going to say, well, the reason I'm able to do this is because it's the law, right? Or this department, this cabinet, um, says that it's the way that it's supposed to be, even though he's the one who told them that it has to be that way. So we end up in a bit of a kingdom. Now, usually they would call this fascism, but I didn't want to use the word fascism because people get so disturbed by that word because you're in a kingdom, but the kingdom looks like a democracy, right? We have these weird places in the world, like in China, where we have President Xi Jinping, we have President Vladimir Putin, and we know that these are not democracy. Like we know that, but they do get to have that title. So that's basically essentially what's going to happen in America soon if Trump gets his way. So I want to ask you, I want to talk about something a little bit different from that. So cash would be a pretty big problem for Democratic politicians, the media, and really anybody who presents a threat to Trump and his retribution campaign. Look, I might even be in a little bit of trouble by making this video if he gets into power, to be honest. I don't mean to be that dramatic, but I may have to actually think about that as well. But let me ask you a question. What if today somebody knocked on your door, right? You open the door and it's the FBI, right? That's a pretty scary situation. That sends a shiver up your spine, right? What the hell is the FBI doing outside your door? And they ask you, hey, we'd like to ask you a couple of questions. And you're like, oh no, like things are about to get crazy. So a lot of Democratic politicians and people of the media are about to start experiencing this situation where the FBI is going to be knocking on their door, or maybe not knocking on your door. They're going to just be around watching you, seeing what you're doing, whatever it is that you're doing, right? And that's going to be what life is like under Kash's FBI, right? So we also have to understand that Kash, just like he said, I could play the video for you again, has a plan to uh, follow Trump's campaign of retribution against Trump's political enemies. Now, I said that because I don't like it when Trump says he's going after the deep state. The deep state is just a term he uses for anybody who disagrees with him or anybody he doesn't like. Let's make sure we're clear. There is no deep state, and there isn't even a swamp. Remember, drain the swamp? There's none of that. There's who he doesn't like. Who doesn't Trump like? So Kash will be the arm that Cash will be the arm to enact retribution against all the people that Trump doesn't like. That's the reason you don't want Cash in power if you can help it, because you don't want to live in a world where you say something wrong about Trump or Trump considers you an enemy and the FBI is knocking on your door. You don't want that. But anyways, thank you for watching. I'll see you later.